Hi, welcome to Job Club. We're going to get started shortly. Go all panelists to all panelists and attendees. We'll get started soon. Hey, Caroline, if you can hear me, my Zoom's frozen up. I'm going to have to close out and come back in. You may have to cover mine. Hi, and welcome to Job Club. We're going to get started shortly. For now, locate the chat box and toggle the to icon from all panelists to all panelists and attendees to ensure we can see your questions and comments as we go. For now, let us know where you're logging in from. Welcome, Rebecca from Lexington. Glad you're here. Welcome, Vaughn from Louisville. Thanks for coming. Welcome to those that are just logging in. So glad you're here for Job Club. I'm Amanda. I'm on the planning team. For now, locate that chat box and let us know where you're logging in from. Toggle the to icon from all panelists to all panelists and attendees to ensure that we can see your questions and comments as we go. Welcome, Jill from Lexington. Welcome, Krista from Lexington. So glad you're here. Oh, Krista's making it work with NTI with her kiddos. That's all right. Many are right now. You're making it happen. Welcome, Todd from Louisville and Heather from Moorhead. So glad you're here. We're going to get started in about a minute and a half. Oh, welcome from Dallas. So glad that you're here. For those that are just logging in, we're going to get started in about a minute and a half. For now, locate that chat box feature and toggle the to icon from all panelists to all panelists and attendees to ensure we can see your questions and comments as we progress today. For now, let us know where you're logging in from. Welcome, Chandra from Harlan. Glad you're here. And Joe from Georgetown, welcome. We are streaming live on Facebook with the cooperative extension. So if you're listening in on Facebook Live, we can't see your chat box participation. We're so glad that you're with us today. Welcome, Brian from Bristol, Tennessee. Thanks for logging in. I do see a hand up in the chat box, just so you know, we're in webinar mode, so your video and audio is not coming through. If you have a question, feel free to ask it in the chat, and we're happy to help. Welcome, June. June from North Carolina, glad you're here. All right, we're going to get started very soon. We've got about 20 more seconds. Welcome to Job Club. I'm Amanda. Lovely to have you today. For now, please locate the chat box feature and toggle the to icon from all panelists to all panelists and attendees to ensure we can see your questions and comments as we go. Here's a pro tip. Go ahead and open up a Word document so you can copy and paste resources as we go along today. Our speaker, Brad, has quite a few book recommendations and great articles for you to read. So having a Word document handy to copy and paste those from the chat will serve you well today. We're going to get started very soon. All right, I think we're ready. Ellie, what do you think? Awesome. Welcome to Job Club. My name's Amanda Shagney and I'm with Alumni Career Services. We're so glad that you're with us today. Thank you so much. Here's what's on the agenda for Job Club today. We're going to do a quick overview of Job Club. We're going to hear some success stories from the chat box, and we had a couple come in ourselves. Our main speaker, Brad Patrick, has a great deck of slides on interview prep. It's going to be fantastic. We're going to share active job leads, and we're going to give some planning partner updates before we talk about next time at Job Club. And then immediately following Job Club today, we're going to have a quick interview practice session. Everyone needs to practice their interviewing skills, and we're going to do that in Zoom meeting mode. And right now I'm going to copy and paste the chat box information over there so that you can copy and paste that into a Word document. So here's the information for our interview practice session that's happening right afterwards. Also note that Alumni Career Services has opened up about 25 appointments today, tomorrow, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of next week for the community, for the Job Club community, to practice their interviewing skills and also to work on your resume, essentials for the job search. And if you'd like to snag one of those 25 appointments, I'm going to pop the registration link into the chat box right now, so you'll see that there. We'd love to have you join. At the Job Club, at the session right after Job Club, we're going to be practicing the STAR strategy for behavioral-based interviewing, so don't miss it. All right, now I'm going to pass it over to my colleague, Nicole.
Hello, everyone. All right, so glad that you all are here with us today, and I'm pretty sure you'll enjoy the presenter today. So just want to touch base a little more about Job Club. So Job Club is currently hosted in a Zoom webinar. Participants in the webinar can hear and see presenters. Attendees are not active on mics or cameras. If you choose to participate in the chat box, your name will be public to the group. So we just want to let you know that. Alrighty, and let's see here. We also are live on Facebook. So yeah, definitely take advantage of that as well. Share it with a friend, share it with a colleague. So to all the Facebookers, we want to welcome you let you know, of course, this is a live viewing. If you would like to engage with the Job Club community and receive our Job Lead newsletter, please register at www.ukalumni.net/jobclub. All righty, so let's see here. Employers and recruiters are always welcome at Job Club. Employer guests may have speaking privilege to share a 1-minute spotlight to share active job leads with the group later in the program. So you guys definitely take advantage of that. That's why we're all here. All righty, so I'm gonna go ahead and pass it on.
Thanks, Nicole. I'm Diana Doggett. I'm one of the Job Club facilitators. I'm the County Extension Agent for Family and Consumer Sciences. And I want to also introduce Caroline Francis. She's the Director of Alumni Career Services. You've already met Amanda Shagney. She's the Associate Director of Alumni Career Services. And Nicole, your title, I'm going to say that officially, is the Employment Specialist at UK Steps with temporary employment. To round out our team is Ellie Goodman and Hannah Sims from the UK Alumni Association and Suzanne Smith from the Fayette County Extension. So what's our purpose? Job Club's mission is to provide a positive environment for job seekers to network and learn best practices for the job search. We meet on the 2nd and 4th Tuesday of each month, and you can find the schedule of topics at www.ukalumni.net/jobclub. So check out what's coming in the future. And I think after you participate today, you will want to be here each and every time, 2nd and 4th Tuesdays. Our current schedule is tentative as we are adapting to the needs of our audience. And we have shifted to Zoom webinar format during the COVID-19 pandemic. So far, it's worked out really well. We want to remind you that some people in the webinar are conducting a confidential job search. So let's please be respectful of privacy for the job search of others. We want to remind you that you need to check out our job search related articles included in our Job Club reminder emails. we really want you to utilize the chat box. Questions, comments, we really like to hear where you're from as well. But just remember to keep that engagement in the chat box positive. And we want to always welcome our first timers. And we are so glad you're here. If this is your first time, you will receive a follow-up survey later today if you registered in Zoom webinar. And this feedback will place you in our notification system for future programs. You'll get email from us, you'll get a short survey a little later today, and you will be informed on what's coming every topic for the second and fourth Tuesday, and even more if we add additional services.
Good morning, everyone. We'd like to remind you that we have a resource packet we'd love for you to take advantage of at the link provided. Also, it's in some of our reminder email correspondence. Also, we have a brand new LinkedIn group, the Central Kentucky Job Club Sharing Community. We encourage you to join that group. Sometimes we get job leads that are very timely, and we post those job leads in that group, as well as articles that we're reading that could be of help. And we encourage others to post on that site as well. It's an open group. We have had some success stories come in. This is a highlight of Job Club for the facilitators, hearing back from Job Club attendees and hearing what they've gone on to do. Today, we've received 2 that came in via email. While I'm sharing those, I'd love to hear in the chat box success stories. So if you have had a success since last Job Club, and that could be that you got your nerve up and made a cold call, or perhaps you've updated your resume or your LinkedIn profile. Let us know in the chat box what you've done to move your job search forward. We heard from Alice Graves since the last Job Club. Many of you remember Alice from back when we were meeting in person. Alice had lost her position in July of 2019. Her company in Lexington closed. She was able to get some part-time retail work, and after her position ended, she came to Job Club religiously. She took advantage of alumni career services. She took advantage of workshops. She did a lot of online learning on her own. And it was so exciting to work with Alice. She had a wonderful attitude. She said that although in March, when she was finally furloughed from her retail position, she didn't sit at home and just collect unemployment. She said, I have been very actively job searching since at least last November, and I just increased my level of passion for job searching more. She said, I didn't let the fact that I was a baby boomer keep me from succeeding. I have many role models in my family who are well into their 70s and are continuing to work. She said, they have been great role models for me, and I'm a good worker. She said, I have an outstanding absentee record, good work ethic. I'm a lifelong learner, and I'm enthusiastic. She said, why wouldn't an employer hire me? Well, she did land a position, and she's working full-time from home with Conduit here in Lexington. We also heard Diana received word from Sherry Sanford, and we're sharing these with permission, that she's thrilled about her new position as a dietetic educator for the Women, Infant, and Children's Services. She's going to be evaluating nutrition education services within the different WIC program locations. Her advice for Job Club attendees is to continue to apply for positions and always be prepared. She said, I found Job Club meetings were really helpful with tips, ideas, and suggestions for my resume, interviewing, and the job search. I especially appreciated all of the networking opportunities. So when you land your position, please let us know. We always like hearing from our former Job Club attendees. We know we've made it full circle when Job Club attendees then go on to send job leads back to us. So please send job leads our way as well. Let's see what we've had in the chat box. What are some success stories that have come in? Good. We've had some people that have gotten connected with STEPS. Wonderful. Jill has a STEPS interview on Thursday. We wish you all the best. This workshop today will certainly be timely for you. Rebecca found positions at some opportunities at a place she formerly worked. Good networking, Rebecca. Even during COVID, employers are still hiring. So don't stop job searching and reach out of your comfort zone and try to network in unusual or different ways than you're accustomed to. It brings me great pleasure to introduce our speaker today, Brad Patrick. Oh my goodness, Brad is such an awesome professional in the community that is continuing to give back in so many ways. Brad has been in high-level HR positions with companies such as Frito-Lay, Pepsi, Delta Airlines, Valvoline, Tempur Sealy, and Brad now is giving back to the University of Kentucky community as an executive in residence with the Gatton College of Business and Economics. Brad and I serve on a Bluegrass SHRM committee together. I always enjoy interacting with him. When we first started a committee meeting in early COVID days, Brad, he brought a great sense of reassurance to our committee, as he does to many executives in the nation and locally. And one of the things he shared was never waste a good crisis. So even in COVID, we can make strides and we can make the world a better place and continue to put our best foot forward in our job search and in our jobs. And today, let's welcome Brad.
Thank you, Carolyn. This is always difficult to present in talking to myself and at home by myself. So I'm going to present to my 3-year-old golden doodle. And if she walks out of the room, I'll know to stop talking and just take questions at this point. So thanks for having me. I think the Job Club has been great. I've been listening now for a couple of months. I think the advice has been timely. It's accurate. I think it's up to date in the kind of the modern hiring world too. So I think it's been a great job, and I've been very pleased to be invited to talk with you today. The presentation that I'm going to talk to, it's called It's Not Me, It's You. And it's a little bit of poking fun at the whole hiring process. So I will probably, and I'll admit right up front that I'll be a little bit on the dramatic side, likely. Many people that know me know that I have the capability of doing that. But I want to make some points here about the hiring process. So I'm going to share with you my experience for over 33 plus years of working at larger companies and smaller companies, and even in my advising work that I do today and my work at UK. So a part of the conversation today is really about recognizing that you have control, that the only control you have is what we're going to try to leverage today, and we'll talk about that. So hopefully that you'll find this to be empowering and maybe even a bit of a pep talk. The objective we're going to work on is really an adjustment about flipping your role. It's not a subtle one. It's a pretty big adjustment. You have to listen to it and kind of work through it to understand what your role is going to be. It's different. It's going to be based upon the control you have, the only control you have, to be a guide in the conversation and a solver. And the reason that we're going to activate your narrative here is because it's about clarity, and it's about getting things done. It's about helping people make a good decision. So using curiosity and inquiry combined with the things that just self-awareness, the things you've always heard at Job Club, to help resolve a company need. And why are you going to do this? Why do you need to really or control. In the next slide, it's basically, go ahead to the next slide over, is because the hiring complexes that companies are dealing with are usually complex. Now, what I wanted to say here is the hiring processes that most companies suck, but I'm not supposed to say that, and it's a bad way to say it, and so probably a little too dramatic. And probably on the call was my good friend and extremely talented talent acquisition leader at Valvoline. She is trying to get me to be less dramatic. So Brandy Dawson, if you're on there, I did not say the company hiring processes suck. I didn't say that. So, and the other thing that you need to be aware of about the hiring process is that the person interviewing you is not very good at it. And if they think they are good at it, that makes them even worse. So I've been an HR professional working for 33 years at, as I mentioned, some really large companies, sophisticated, advanced companies. I've worked in smaller and mid-sized companies who work really hard. I've worked with entrepreneurs. I've worked as a consultant in advising businesses overall. And I can just tell you that I have not found a company who's in such great command of their hiring process that they, that you walk away from it and really are just impressed with how well they do it. Now, you may have examples of it. I may be a little dramatic, but I can tell you right now, not many places are exceptionally good at this whole process. Hiring processes are most often a complex and an awkward, hot mess. So if you flip over the next slide, let's talk about that. Job requisitions within businesses, and many of you probably know this, it starts off with an incredible amount of tense feelings, political behaviors. When managers many times want to hire somebody, they have to go through a horrible process to justify hiring somebody. And with that comes a bunch of conditions and conflict and issues and things that people become aware of and sensitive to. And when those jobs requisitions are submitted, I would suggest to you that most often they're not well thought out. Usually it's someone leaves, boom, I need to replace them. That's the amount of thought that goes into it. Or the workload has gotten so great, I need more hands to do work. And sometimes that's a product of the manager not really managing the work in the environment. So right off the bat, we have a complex, strange, not well thought out process. And then you have hiring managers who are very busy doing things every day, running the business, keeping things kind of running along. You've got their bosses on them. You got people that they support coming at them. They're in the middle, and they're so busy, they just want to be served. So many times they just look at HR or talent acquisition or somebody, the administrative officer of their offices, just get me somebody to hire. Just go find me somebody. And that is an incredible amount of stress. It's very low engagement. The hiring manager just wants somebody who can do the job. And then if a company uses multiple interviewers, the process isn't always well coordinated between people. I have seen the most sophisticated companies have cancellations and changes, and I need to move my interview, and I wasn't ready for this. And here's my thing I love all the time. Brad, Mary needs a resume. If the candidate's sitting in her office and she needs a resume. So you already know that the interviewer is not prepared. And I'm hoping, I'm looking at Phoebe, my golden doodle here, and she's agreeing with me. So I'm hoping you're agreeing with me as well, that you've seen this. So overly structured processes or even completely unstructured interactions offer a whole set of complexities that exist. So you see my picture there of the hiring process. This is probably pretty accurate in most companies. So once again, understand from an organization perspective, the hiring process has a lot of complexity built into it. Now let's look at the interviewer. Job requirements are poorly understood. This is the major issue. So when people ask me about the hiring process, the first place I start with is how well do you understand the job? And really, when this is done poorly, kind of everything else you do is really a mess after that. You can have the best processes in the world, but they don't study the job. And what do I mean by that? I mean that they don't understand the real skills a person needs, the experiences, what motivation and interest a person has. They don't really spend the time looking at it. They just look at me and say, Brad, it's XX job. We've had that job before. And what they're doing is they're thinking of everybody that's had it in the past, or the person most recently left it, whether they were successful or they failed at it. It's just not well understood. So you take that and just understand that sitting there and interviewing people is very difficult. It's something that people don't get a lot of practice at doing, especially if they only hire 1 or 2 people a year or less. Or even if they hire a lot of people, they're just being repetitive and they're trying to get through it. Plus, legal and HR generally has scared interviewers to death about the questions they ask. It's just basically awkward to sit there and interview another person. I wish I would have kept stories over the years of what type of things people ask. You see my little cartoon up there. If you were a tree, what tree would you be? I love asking the interviewers, what are you doing with that information? Well, how are you going to use that? And sometimes that comes from an extremely structured form that they have to read off of, or they're completely unstructured, have no idea what to ask. They're asking a candidate questions that they're processing and they're working through, and they're trying to keep the world around them straight. And they don't really know why they're asking it. And then when you get multiple interviewers, so you go in and interview with 4 different people, the effort of getting them together and having a meaningful conversation about usually a poorly understood job, with all the awkwardness and biases amongst everybody in the room, it's an incredible struggle. So what I want to get to here is, as a candidate, you're showing up into a very complex environment. I'm not here to blame anybody. I'm not here to make anybody feel sad. But once again, I have not really found the environment from the range of companies I've worked for or what I've worked with that they've got that figured out. So let's go to the next slide. So what are the implications of all this? You are sitting there and you have hiring managers, the people that interview and helping out, HR people, you have the administrative folks scheduling you, you've got all the things going on, messed up with a bias-filled, politically influenced, stressful, and awkward process to make a very important decision. It's amazing when an interviewer comes out of an interview and you sit down with them, how little they remember about what just happened. They're trying to process everything. So once again, coming to the point, as a candidate, the only real control you have is providing the concise input to the hiring process. So Job Club, there's a lot of discussion here about research is critical, and it's even more so as we go build our approach here. Self-awareness must be thorough with available examples. The STAR process that you're going to talk about later today is a wonderful thing to get prepared for. It is practice and repetition. So what you're going to do for the part you control, you're going to offer a solution that is going to come from your research that you do, your self-awareness, and this inquiry process that we're going to talk about. So preparing for the interview, the standard practices still apply. So all the stuff that we've talked about and you've seen and you've heard and in Job Club presentations, you've got to do the research. Website, annual reports, personal links, personal network, LinkedIn, Facebook, all of those things out there, still important. Study the job description. You're probably doing it more so than the company is, but study it and refresh in your mind your skills, your experiences, your accomplishment stories about how you apply to that, how you fit with that job description. Those have to be in the forefront of your mind. Do a complete current news scan about the company. I've had people come into an organization who've studied the annual report to death, but they've missed all the things that have been happening in the last quarter of the business. So make sure that your research is current, and also about key people. Obviously, you got to be well rested, dressed appropriately, and a little bit early. Be concise, be polite, positive, and optimistic. Have pen, paper, and take notes, and follow up with personal note on all this. So that's all the stuff that needs to happen, and that's all right down the right path. That's good. So what's different? Let's look at the next slide. we're going to modify your role in the interview. So once again, this sounds subtle, but it's a pretty big shift in mindset here. We want to shift you from some sitting there awkwardly being judged and evaluated with leading with your narrative, with telling your story. We want to change your role to a contributor and solver to the hiring need. You're going to shift from a selling, convincing person using a inquiry solution mindset to engage in an adult conversation. You're going to get out of the tennis match volley of what type of tree would you be? Answer. How, what are your strengths? Answer. You're going to get out of that conversation and you're going to insert questions along the way. You're going to engage in a conversation. So you're going to combine your knowledge of the company, the nature of the question, and an understanding of who you are to get into an inquiry mode of discussion. So this is a different banter and rhythm of a conversation back and forth. It's connected to the person as two people talking about it. It's displaying your ability to listen, process, and connect a lot of things, showing interest in what you're doing and concern as a problem solver. So it's a very different approach. This follows the thinking of the concept is called appreciative inquiry. And as a faculty member at UK in the Gatton School of Business, a course I teach is change management. In the change management concept, in the world of change management, one approach is telling people what to do, being very forceful and clear and harsh and direct and specific. And another approach that softens it up a little bit, and it's actually more meaningful, addresses the receiver, the person receiving the information's involvement in it. It doesn't force a person into being resistant or defending their point or being judgmental. It's actually engaging them and having a conversation with people. So we use appreciative inquiry to help influence people. I want to make sure the words that I'm using here are being accepted as influence and engagement and discussion versus being manipulative. I want to be careful of that because being manipulative means that you're trying to do something or convey something, maybe through trickery or putting people in awkward positions. And it's really not that at all. It's really about being more of a solution-oriented person to help them understand what's going on. So this is a pretty big departure from very traditional interview prep. Okay, so what do we do in interview prep? We memorize answers to standard questions. And I looked on the internet and it is full of pages about responding to the traditional questions. I always love this one. What is your greatest weakness? And the answer that you've memorized is, I just work too dang hard all the time. I just, what? It's sometimes embarrassing being so good all the time. Ooh. And obviously that the interviewer, when they get back to the crowd and discuss it, it's a game. Well, what kind of question did you ask them? I asked them what their greatest weakness, and they gave me this memorized answer. It becomes a topic by itself. Pre-building questions often get also interpreted as a concern. Well, why did she ask about the benefits? Is she unhealthy? Why did she ask about her work hours? I bet she's not wanting to work that hard. Those are the things that get into the point where I'm the interviewer, I'm going to ask a bunch of questions, I'm going to stop and say, what questions do you have? And then you ask questions, and those get judged too. Now, asking questions is very important. I'm just suggesting, once again, sounds subtle, but very differently, to get into the point of asking the question in the flow of the conversation. It's a shift from being expected to be tested and judged versus being engaged. So it's a different approach. So the concepts that I'm hitting you with here and I'm reminding you with is to think about appreciative inquiry, inquiry to help you lead with your narrative. Once again, take the idea of what you've researched and understand about the company and build that into a two-way conversation. Now, full admission here. This approach is a little bit more difficult than the traditional interview banter back and forth. Question, answer, question, answer, question. Do you have any questions for me? Yes, question, and then awkward answer. It's very different. It's something you have to practice. The Job Club folks here, and Amanda mentioned practice. You have to practice. And you're not practicing manipulative responses. you're practicing connecting concepts and ideas to what the conversation is about. You're bringing into the forefront of your mind relative experiences and ideas that make sense in the conversation. So you must have a thorough amount of self-awareness. How do you get to self-practice? You also get to it by finding people who care about you, who tell you the truth, and to help you understand your blind spots. The reason they're blind, because you can't see them. So a very, very important aspect of practice. Because once again, what you're doing is you're bringing up the recall as you look at the job description, as you understand the company, as you look at their what's said about them, and then who you are. How do you make that connective? How do you lead with that narrative to create a conversation in what you're dealing with? Go to the next slide. So what's different? What's the different outcome you have here? Well, first of all, you've connected with the interviewer at a working professional level. You're engaged in a conversation. One thing that you're going to find, I have found in my years and years of discussion, is when the interviewer and interviewee have a discussion and it's got inquiry in it where a person's expressing their interest and connecting thoughts, the interviewer remembers that. If they interview 5 or 6 people for a job, they usually forget all the stuff, or they have to write it down, or they don't remember. When they get to the 3rd or 4th candidate, they can't remember who said what. But what we're finding is they do remember when they're engaged in a conversation. When they look at a person, whether it's on video or in person or on the phone, and they have a conversation with them where they're making a connection to what the interviewer said, and how you responded, as more of a conversation that is more memorable. They don't even have to write all that down. They just remember that work. So once again, you're not selling and facing that point of judgment. What you're doing is you're using your skills, your knowledge, your experiences, all your motivations are reflected in the job context, in the conversation of what the interviewer is asking. Once again, we're focused on the areas you can control. You can't control an interviewer who is crazy and runs around and is interested in, if you were a candy bar, what type of candy bar would you be? Not sure what they're going to do with it, but you can't control that. So as much as it's frustrating, you can give up on that part. You can control your part of it. You're working to draw the interviewer out of this awkward game that's all driven, starting at the job requisition, all the way through all their biases and understanding their comfort, and you're drawing them into a business conversation. And plus, let's recognize it, folks. Selling yourself is exhausting, especially if you're a person who's humble, and it's just hard talking about yourself. However, when you can get into this this inquiry method, this way of advancing your story, that's a positive way to do it. Sharing and solving a problem feels better. It's more respectful. Even if you don't get the job, once again, you can't control the final decision. You can only influence it. So those are my concepts. That's what I want you to think about. That's the challenge I have for you as it's set up here. If you want to learn more about it, there's a couple of resources I have here for you. Dr. Laura Huang is a professor. I think she's at Harvard. She's written a really neat book. It's called Turning Adversity into Advantage. And her book isn't just focused on interviewing. It really is about becoming more of an inquiry-based problem solver and change leader and an interviewer in how you work out in the working world here. It's a nice book. I also put a podcast in from a really nice podcast called Coaching for Leaders. She's a guest on that. You can listen to what she says. She's got a really nice angle about women and other non-majority people, making sure that their stories are told and that they overcome even the unconscious bias that exists out there, but really bringing to the forefront of who you are in any type of conversation. So that's a nice resource. I encourage you to even listen to her just before you go buy a book. Also, I don't know her, so I don't get anything for recommending the book. So that's your choice. Overall, go to the library. That's a good idea. Let's go to the next slide. Here's some other resources you can check on. There's some really good business writers here, and there's some good psychologists here. But you can see this is a very kind of developing interesting concept. The appreciative inquiry comes from a researcher by the name of David Cooper Ryder. I believe he's out of Case Western, and he's really created a much more positive, engaging approach for involvement here. And once again, this is something I encourage you to practice a great deal. This isn't getting into an interview and every time the interviewer asks you a question, you respond with another question. It is a practiced event where you get more clarity, and then you connect your experiences and your knowledge, your motivation to that to help them out, help the person out. And you will find that the interviewer, when they show up back in my office as the HR leader, or when we have the meeting, when you pull all the interviewers together, I have continually find that the person who had an engaging, inquiry-based conversation with the interviewer is remembered. They remember without looking at notes. They remember the stories that are told. They remember the connection of a person's experiences to what they need in the job. So I think it's a very powerful approach to present yourself, to leverage what you do have control of, and to navigate the environment and influence others to think about you as a successful candidate. With that, the next slide is going to ask for questions. I seem to have held the attention to Phoebe, my golden doodle. She seemed to have hung in the room here with me. Likewise, I hope you have found some interest in this as well, but I'd love to talk about it. I'd love to get any questions, comments, or experiences you might have to understand this topic better, to challenge this topic, or to give us some ideas about experiences you've had. So I can look to Amanda and other people.
What if the interviewer is not very good?
I do have a guest who just joined me.
Was that your golden doodle?
No, that would be my son. My son is an organizational development specialist at Hannah Resource Group, and he does work with companies in this manner. So he has raised his hand and says, what if the interviewer is not very good? And the answer to that, I haven't met an interviewer yet who is good at it. I mean, that sounds like a harsh, dramatic statement. Interviewing is really, really hard. And like I said, people just don't get that much practice. So, this idea basically is you're guiding, you're influencing, you're telling stories to overcome this person who's just not good at interviewing. I'm going to sit here and make sure that you understand that me being critical of all these people who interview, that they just stink at it, I'm one of them. It's really, really hard. Just to add more, and I see Amanda, you're poised to give me some questions, but just there's more research out there, and my academic friends at UK and Gatton would love that I'm referring academically here, but there's research done many years ago out of University of Iowa, and I don't have the exact stats in front of me, but when one person interviews another person, it's something like their accuracy is right around 13 to 15%. That's it. That's the best that one person interviews another person can get out of it. And then the research goes further. And when you get 4 people to interview, you can actually push that number up somewhere in the mid 20%. That's the interview process. It's not very useful. And I know as a candidate, if you've been out there working hard and you run into things and you just roll your eyes at the people you're that's part of it. So like I said, this advice in this direction, the suggestion for you today is to be really great at what you can control and create the conditions for that person to overcome their weakness as an interviewer, if that makes sense. Amanda, did you have questions there?
You've got a flood of questions in the chat. I'll pass them to you. All right, so Dale's asking, what are the interviewers looking for when they ask the question, what's your management style?
What they're looking for generally, I'm making general comments here, and I will say this in general, what an interviewer is generally looking for, and this is even backed up in some research I can go find for you, they're looking mostly for somebody they're comfortable with, they'd want to have a beverage with later in the day, right? They're looking for comfort. They're looking for somebody that they, depending on their own management style, somebody that they can comfortably either control, influence, not be embarrassed by, get the work done, not complain. They're looking for comfort. Now, when I say that, what they're not looking for that I wish they were is the best candidate for the job, right? And we as HR leaders and as org developers and talent developers, we always say, hire somebody better than you. And you'll hear a couple of famous CEOs and other people say, hire somebody better for you. Yeah, I'm going to just tell you right now, that ain't happening a whole lot. That's just not. And because, you know why? Because it's scary. It's uncertain. And if I hired somebody better than me, they may take my job. Those are all very natural human behaviors. So what they're mostly looking for, sad to say, is a level of comfort with you, a level of trust. And by being with the appreciative inquiry, the inquiry method, basically what that does, it gives me a comfortable feeling. And it gets you out of the game mode. And the game mode is the one that spins out of control so quickly. The interviewer is asking you questions and they sometimes have a thought behind it. You know, we work a lot of hours here every week and it's, you know, what do you think about that? Well, the rehearsed answer is, I have no personal life whatsoever, don't care about anything except making you successful. That's what they're looking for. Because when they hire you, then they want to go home every night and know that they've got this fully committed and loyal person to do that. So what you have to do is you have to have a conversation to make sure that you understand, that the person understands it. And an adult response to that would be much better response. It's so hard to do this, Amanda, by not seeing anybody, but I'll look at you.
I know it's
my
hard.
Golden doodle, and now my son for reaction. So you shook your head a little bit. So hopefully that was.
You're doing great. You got about 5 more questions in here. You're doing fantastic.
Good.
Okay, next
Well,
question.
keep me going.
Do you have any suggestions for how to begin the inquiry type conversation where the interviewer is required to read from a list of questions, maybe those behavioral based questions?
Yeah, no, that's good. And many organizations do that. And it's just simply listen to the nature of the question, respond to it, and ask a follow-up question to that. Is a good, easy conversational way of doing things. What would be a good example? Can you tell me a situation where you led in a complex situation? Sure, yeah. You know, in my previous roles as an organizer in my church group, you know, just getting everybody to involved is a hard thing, and the cleanup committee is really a hard thing to get people to volunteer for. Is that what you find in the company here? Is that when those things happen? See, now you've pulled the interviewer into a conversation. Hopefully, if they're paying attention and not fiddling around with forms and the HR person and legal person in the back of their head saying, be careful, don't ask about whether they can drive to work or not, right? They're worried about all that stuff. The person's going to hopefully drop their guard and engage in a conversation. You know, sometimes that is the case here because people are really busy, and that's good. And he said, well, yeah, that's what I found as well. See, now we're into a conversation. And now you can say, you know, how I've handled it in my church group is, you know, we have a special, you know, and you go tell your story. That's a conversation. When that interviewer goes back and sits down with the HR person and the 3 or 4 other people, they don't have to check their notes. They're saying, you know, this person tells the same, you know, this person deals with the same things we've dealt with here in our own company. Those are the things you're trying to do. So hopefully that's a good example of that. Once again, it's practice, practice, practice. And Amanda's going to give you a chance to do it today with the STAR method, but it's practice about engaging in a conversation. It's a shift away from responding and then stopping and waiting for the next question to be volleyed at you. It's an overhead smash. What is your greatest weakness, right? That's the stuff that you've got to work through and got to feel comfortable with and get very conversational. And I'm telling you, the way to master that, no matter whether you're an extreme introvert or an extreme extrovert, it's practice. You have to practice that. And what that practice does, it recalls things from you. Amanda?
Next question for you. What literature would you recommend specifically focusing on people of color who come into the process with normal bias and preconceived notions?
Yeah, the book that I mentioned is a great resource. I think it's a, you know, truly, it's a well-written book. It's straightforward. It's simple. And she has a major kind of feature on that aspect of it. And it's a good approach. And I think appreciative inquiry or inquiry in general is especially for people who are dealing with, conscious or unconscious bias overall. It's about getting your narrative of who you are and working past all those things that people are thinking about you. Women in general, most male interviewers want to ask if they're going to go have babies or not, right? And what that's consuming their mind. And they know that legal and HR has warned them and warned them and warned them that somebody's going to come and cut their head off and they're going to get their name in the newspaper. And so that's the stuff that they're worried about. And I hate it. I hate to tell you that. It's the fact of life. So what you have to do is you got to present who you are, what you are, or what your motivations are in a way that gets them with them, can make a good decision.
I did pop the resources from your slide before in the chat. So if you guys are watching the chat, feel free to copy and paste that into a Word document so you can get those later. All right, so Julie's question is next. What about likability? I feel like interviewing teams of which I've been part of often look for an elusive quality. Any tips for being likable in an interview?
Well, I think likable, it's hard to, that's a big thing because everybody's got their angle. I think likable is being somebody that addresses what a person's concerned about, is comfortable, has a confidence about who they are themselves. I think that's likable. I think if you go in with angles and hard, debating concepts and principles, I think that separates people. Obviously right now work environments are just eaten up with the political divide and the harshness of that. It's best to stay away from those things in an interview if you can. However, I'm not saying to go in being mealy mouthed. I think, if you want to go in and you do get a question asked that's harsh and depends on an angle where you have to pick a side, pick a side, but be open to hear other people's points of view. And I think that's the difference that we're dealing with in work environments now. I know just connected with the folks at Hannah Resource Group and the companies that they support, a lot of companies are expressing this conflict that they have of people who are friends are now, at each other. And I think the issue is that the divisiveness becomes from the hard positions people are taking and their inability or their lack of interest in understanding the other perspective. So I think likability comes from, even though you have an opinion that someone doesn't disagree with, but your willingness to listen to them, to be heard. And we know from basic psychology that people want to be heard, they want to be respected, they want to work on important things. So I think if you could, likability comes from you treating another person as they're important. And I think that's a good way to be likable. Even if you are on one side of the aisle or the other, it's a good way to rebalance the conversation. This is my opinion. What do you think? What are your experiences? Help me learn about what you're doing. It's just a better, more positive way to join an organization or join a group of friends anywhere, I think is a way to think about that. Great questions, Amanda. Thanks.
Oh, you've got some stumpers coming. Get ready.
Okay, stump the old HR guy.
Now, here's a good one for you. So how should you respond when the interviewer is interrupted by a text or a phone call? Of course, interviewers are still having to work.
Yeah, well, it's rude. It's horrible. If my job as an HR leader, at least I earn the right many times to be very direct and with folks to tell them not to do that. I think you have to take it as a way of life right now. You have to, allow them to take the text. There's no sense of you correcting them. It's not your place to have to come in and fix their management behaviors, although you wish it was better. I think what you need to do is to recognize that it happens. And sometimes it is an emergency and the person needs to do it. But I think the best way to do it, once again, in the inquiry mode and in the conversation mode, is to step back. And when the person rejoins you again, give them a chance to get their head right and then refresh where you were. Once again, that shows your engagement, that shows your ability to process information. It shows the ability for you to regroup. And when crises happen, when interruptions happen, be the person in the room that pulls everything back. And they're going to be looking on their form, or they're going to be looking in their head, or they're going to try to memorize or recall from memory the next question they're supposed to ask. Regroup it, navigate, be the guide in the conversation and take the ownership, because you can control that. You can control your own actions. You can't control what they're doing. And you have to accept that and be that person in the interview process. Be the regrouper. Be the one to get it back on track. Be the one that connect the stories again.
Very good.
This drives
Okay.
me nuts, but it does happen.
Mhm.
Keep firing away, Amanda.
You got it. Lisa's asking, what about those interviews that last all day and you interview with literally 20 different people? How do you manage that and the ordeal of doing potentially 20 bad interviews?
Yeah. Some companies are very proud to have the 25-step interview process and all that other stuff. I always loved, my great question is, great, what are you going to do with all that, right? If they set it up that way and that's what their comfort is, the thing that you can do, and this is powerful because what you're doing, you're controlling the narrative, you're controlling what your part of the narrative. When you connect what other interviewers are saying with the interviewer, you're helping. You know that you can go, interview number 17 asks you a question and then you say, that's interesting. I've heard that question, 13 of the 17 interviews I've had here. And it seems to be an important issue. Here's how I would handle it. What is the nature of why, you can ask that question. And what happens in what you're creating is when the 25 interviewers all get in a room and the HR person's trying to herd the cats, the people that remember is when you connect, they'll say, oh, did you ask that question too? Or what was your answer you got? And what they're looking for is, can I trip them up? Can I judge and evaluate them? But what you've done actually is you've connected the points. And sometimes it is an unsophisticated interviewer's trick that they ask you the same question, then they get in the room and they compare them. And I know you as an interviewee, you've just told the same story 25 times. That's okay, because what you're doing, you're having 25 different conversations. So yes, so the companies that go through massive amounts of multiple interviewers, you control the narrative. You can control your part of the narrative. You can leverage that by connecting what you've heard with your answers that you're given from who you are, your experiences and your knowledge and so forth. But yeah, we've seen that process. We've definitely seen that process.
Okay, next slide for you. How and with whom do you suggest practicing your interview skills?
Well, you can always start out with people who know you and love you so they can tell that ain't true. That's where you'd start. But the powerful thing about networking, here's where my academic buddies would love me, especially the folks at UK in the social network analysis area. There's a principle called the Granovetter's principle, and it's the strength of weak ties. And this goes into networking in general. So you've practiced and practiced with people who love you, who will tell you the truth. But really the strength comes from networking, from talking to people you don't know. And that's what that whole theory is about, is that you get more value by networking with people you don't know than the ones you know. Now, the ones you know usually know the same thing you know, but the people you don't know, you're actually finding ways to network, to expand by connecting with people you don't know. One of the exercises I do in change management or in leadership or in helping executives formulate their mission and vision for a company is I make them stand in lines, two people across from each other, and I make them tell the same story 3 times. Each time they tell it, they move to the next person and they move to the next person. In that exercise, what happens 100% of the time is by the time you've said it at least 3 times, and you can do 5, 7, or 10, that you find that your story is more comfortable, it's more concise, you've emphasized the right points, you've shaved off all the stuff that doesn't work, and then the person has a better understanding overall. So just think about that when it comes to practicing interviews. You should be practicing all the time with people around you, and you should be asking for honest and open feedback. Does that make sense to you? Am I clear? And then what you do is as you network and you meet people you've never met before, tell your story. You're not necessarily sitting down to say, hey, could you interview me? Just tell your story. And the more that you do that, you'll become clearer, more concise. You'll be better at recalling things. And then also, let's practice this. When you network people you don't know, be very inquisitive. Be very curious about who they are. And then as they pull that up, you can find the way to recall stories that are similar and connected to that. Or appreciate the uniqueness of it. And that person now is feeling very respected, very involved, and you are now engaged in a practice of, you are now involved in a practice of engagement. You're now engaged with the person. That person, hopefully you'll notice, becomes more comfortable with you. That's what you're trying to get to, because once again, these people who think they're good at interviewing, they're just looking for somebody they're comfortable with, sadly enough. What else?
Great point. I see about 4 more. Let's see. Andrew's asking or saying, I have a soft or introductory get to know you type interview soon. Do I prepare for this as though it's a really formal interview? What advice do you have for him?
I think it's kind of like how, I always think about how you get dressed. I'd start formal, then you can make it more informal as the time goes on. It's hard to go the other direction. If you come in informal and relaxed and all that, and you find that the environment is really asking you to be more formal, it's hard to make that adjustment up. But it's always good to come in more formal and then loosen up as the environment tells you. So, I know people struggle in their mind about, I don't want to come in and be tight. But when you're interviewing, and this is always in the case when it does come to dress, is when the companies that I've worked with, have been very casual. The candidate needs to come in a suit and tie or a formal, business wear, a suit for a female. And that's what they expect. So you're living up to the expectations of a candidate. Now, if they say, hey, loosen up, take your jacket off, take your tie off, that's great. It's hard to go the other way. So I would always go in kind of prepared to be more formal to tell your story. Now, once again, that means to be inquisitive. That means curious. That means interested in learning from them. And the ability to connect your stories to what they're asking about and what they're talking about. And then you can loosen up as they loosen up. And what you'll find actually when you do this well, generally, most people will loosen up with you, or they'll even suggest, well, that's good. And then they'll get into more of a casual conversation. Once again, the awkwardness of the interview. And some of you on the call here probably have interviewed people before, just recall what it feels like. I got all this stuff running through my head, and my boss didn't want to approve this, and I got this, and the last person was this, and they're dealing with a lot of stuff in their head. You can navigate and be a guide in the conversation by being put together. I'll even suggest to you, if you don't get the job, you're still better off in that method of doing it. Head faking somebody or manipulating them into a job that just doesn't have a fit for you isn't a good sign either. And I know that's a hard thing to accept when you need a job sometimes, but the part that the interviewee plays in it, when some folks that I've worked with, and I mentioned Brandy on this call here, we've always tried to turn our interview process, and it's got its formality in it, but into more of a conversation, because I think our interviewers do better. My job is to prepare the interviewers. And they just do better when they have conversations. So we give them a little structure, we give them a guide, and we recognize that they don't practice very much. So we do try to hold their hand and give them a little bit of comfort in what's going on around them and make them feel comfortable. But they're much better when they can get into a conversation.
That's great. We've got about 5 more minutes for questions. Let's see. Nicole is asking, so what's a good response for the question, what is your ultimate goal here? Obviously responding with, well, eventually I'd like to be your boss is out of the question, but being a team player and contributing to the success sounds very unoriginal. So any recommendations, suggestions on how to sound ambitious without making the interviewer feel intimidated by you?
Yeah, well, I mean, some people, actually, there are people out there who want you to say that. I can't remember what book came out, or some famous business person said, only hire people who want to take your job. And I think that's a weird comment, because it just introduces more stress. However, this goes back to who you are and why are you interviewing for the job? What is the motivation for it? You've got to get in, I would tell you, you're a lot better off with sincerity, clarity, and telling the truth. I think you need to think about your motivations. What makes you that's the best answer, is the most sincere answer in the world. And sometimes it's as simple as, I just love being on a team. I love to do important work. I love to see results. I love to satisfy customers. It may sound trite and insincere to you, but that's really what you're doing, right? You're and also it fits with human psychology. You want to do something important. You want to be respected for the work you do. You get dignity from the nature of your work that you do. And you want to be involved. And I mean, that's what it is. And you say, geez, that's what excites me. Then you can always say, I need to make money too, right? I mean, there's the person sitting from you interviewing you. They're not doing it for fun. They're for grins and giggles. They're doing it to feed their family and pay their bills as well. So it's not an insincere answer. Now, if you go in and say, I want to be the richest person in the neighborhood, that sounds trite. I think you got to get in there and think about what are your real personal interests and motivations? What satisfies you? And I think being very, very honest with good stories and recalling from the past that, the great jobs you've had and why they were great. And I'm just who I am and add value and build friends and satisfy a customer or to do better than I did last year. There's a whole bunch of really great answers that really aren't trite or rehearsed. They're real. And I think the more that that can come from your heart, your interest and who you are personally, it's fine. As silly as it might sound, it's powerful. It's real. Be real.
Great advice. Authentic always wins, right?
Authentic. Yeah. And that's a hot topic today, right? Too. How do you be authentic and practice these things? When the person you're practicing, look across the room at the table to them and say, did that feel authentic to you? And if they look at you and they say, well, then you got to check your words. You check your words and the spirit and how you've conveyed them. And I bet if you do it 3 different times, I bet you'll figure out the one that makes sense and who you're comfortable with, and it all fits into place.
I think we have time for maybe 1 or 2 more. Let's see here, Brad.
We'll talk
Heather,
all day if they want. If they want to talk all day,
we can
we'll
do
talk
that.
all day.
I would talk with you all day. This is great. All right, here's the next one for you. If a company has some negative reviews from employees regarding management and the workplace culture, but your interview experience went well, is it appropriate to ask about that during an interview?
Yeah, yes, very much so. I think it shows that you care and, the nature of your question. You don't always have to refer to Glassdoor and places where you got it. I struggle with Glassdoor, although I know some of the board members at Glassdoor and they're very passionate about it, but it's anonymous. So to me, that's reckless. But what I would say is, I'd ask, truly inquisitive questions. Hey, if you're, maybe your organization has done an engagement survey or a satisfaction survey, kind of what type of things did you learn from it, right? That's a safe question. Or, or if you had working here, X interview, the interviewer, you've been here 6 months, 6 years, 20 years. What is it that you believe that you got that can be improved here? Knowing that not every place is perfect, what are the things that you would want? It's a great question to understand the environment you're going into. And there's a lot of companies that have great candidate experience, and it's a wonderful process. They handhold you and they give you cheese snacks along the way, and that's great. But you get there and their management style is difficult. There's an I don't have this in my deck anywhere. There's once again, my academic buddies, they were going to love this, but there's a model by Rensis Likert, 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 University of Michigan, and he's done a nice job of coming up with 4 ways to describe the management style of an organization. And when I was in private equity, we would use that model when we'd go evaluate a business to buy, and we would go try to figure out what it was like. And we had questions asked. If we can put that in the comments here. If you go look on the internet, look up Rensis Likert. Now he's the guy that came up with the Likert scale, when you do the rank things 1 to 10 or 1 to 5 or 1 to 7. But the thing I really like he has this model of what type of management style is there. And if you read that, you can formulate really good questions, really good inquiry about what is your business like? What's your management style like? So use that as a resource. That's the purpose of that model, is to understand what the style is like. It's just simply 4 boxes, and there's a brief description of each one. And I bet when you think about all the places that you've either worked or or friends that have talked to you, you could kind of diagnose that. But that's another really great resource for you to figure out, what you may be walking into. Does someone please call the professors at Gatton School and tell them I've referred to research like 5 times? You know
We'll
what? And
let your dean know you're in good shape.
my golden doodle just licked my hand, so I hope that's a good sign.
Caroline and I just popped a couple of links on that management style that you just recommended into the chat. So if, for those that are in the webinar mode, be sure to copy and paste those into your Word document so you can reference those for later. All right,
You guys are
there's
so dang good.
one more question in here that's so good, and I've heard this so many times. I'd love to end with this one with you, Brad, if that's okay. If you've got it in one more question. Any recommendations or suggestions for people who are shy and slow to warm up in an interview? How do they give a positive impression during an in-person interview when it's just hard to get in that groove?
Well, a lot of that, whether you're shy or extroverted, you stand on a table or you slip into the background, is your eye contact, the warmth of who you are, the sincerity, and your interest in other people, right? In the interest of them. That's the best way to warm up. That's a comfortable feeling. And it's funny, when I was early in my career at PepsiCo, Frito-Lay, I was out in the field and I ran around and I thought the executives and headquarters, they are geniuses. They are just so on top of it every day. They're just perfect, right? And then I got moved to headquarters and got to work directly with them, and they're a hot mess, just like everybody else. It's just crazy. And I just kind of grew up that day. I looked around, is that, I worked with one of the most well-recognized and powerful executives in the world, a guy named Jim Kilts. Jim Kilts is one of the most painfully, awkwardly introverted people you would ever meet. I mean, just incredible. However, as quiet as he was, he became approachable with eye contact and sincerity, and he just asked great questions. He was just naturally inquisitive, and he was interested in you. It was so powerful. And I worked with other people too who just got their warmth from their eye contact, their positioning, and their interest in other people. And like I said, you don't have to be a loud, screaming, yelling on top of the table person to get recognized. Very powerful and influential executives I've worked with in the past can carry that just through their sincerity and their interest in others. And I think that's pretty positive.
All right, at this time, I'd love for us to just fill that chat box with gratitude for Brad. Remember, our speakers for Job Club, they volunteer their time and expertise to share with us, so we always want to express gratitude. Thank you so much, Brad. This was fantastic.
I appreciate it. I love hearing success stories, but I want everybody to know a success story is when you work hard and prepare and you do your research. That's the success. When you show up and you are comfortable and prepared, that's winning to me. And I think it's been great. And once again, I hope all for the best of you and getting through this tough time for some folks. It'll all get better. And by you taking command of what you can control is very powerful. So thanks so much. Appreciate it. Thanks, Amanda.
Thank you. Thank you so much. All right, at this time, we're going to pass it over to Diana to get started with some partner updates.
Thanks. And again, thanks, Brad. That was just, I took so many notes. I cut and paste so much information, and wow, what a great session we've had today at Job Club. Another real benefit of Job Club is access to job leads. And so we would like to take time now for any attendee that has a job lead. If you would like to share it in our webinar chat box, we will announce those. So please take that time right now. And if there's any employers in the audience that would like to share job leads, please use the raise hand function, and we will give you an opportunity to share that. So we'll just wait a second and see if there's anybody that wants to announce one. I do want to remind you that if you have a job lead, please email that to us by noon today. And at UK Alumni Career at uky.edu, and we will include those in our post-meeting job list serve. So We'll be sending that list, those leads out in our email to our attendees. All right, do we have anyone here? Has one? I don't know, team, if you're seeing one that I'm not. But just keep in
I'm
mind.
not. I think you're good to go, Diana.
Okay, just keep in mind, if you have one, please share. All right, we want to share some good news, and obviously we have lots of other good information, especially from the Cooperative Extension Service and all the offices in 120 counties. They have a lot of programming, a lot of good information for you to take advantage of. And here in Fayette County, we are, again, we're looking at fall and have some good programming that has been planned and will be delivered. I have put in the chat box a program I'm going to do this Thursday on Facebook Live, and it's going to be a fall harvest salad. But it's a plated up Kentucky Proud recipe, and we've been featuring those all month. So please join me. And we hope that you'll check the whole list of plated up Kentucky Proud recipes. We also have a program that's going to be talking about grocery apps and savings. And that's on September the 29th at 6 p.m. So again, you just check websites, Facebook pages, and all of your local counties. You're going to have an array of subject matter. I always like to give a shout out to my horde agent. If you're inquisitive at this time of the year about spiders and caterpillars, ragweed, and any of the September quick tips for lawns and gardens, and you'll want to check out Horticulture Facebook page and website as well. So don't hesitate. We're there. Land Grant University. That's what we do. We present research-based information to the general public.
Caroline, you're up next. Maybe she's away from the computer. I'll take her slide. So from Alumni Career Services, here's our news. Oh, she just dropped off. I bet her connection fell out. Every second Wednesday of the month, we are having our Facebook Live Q&A session, and Caroline and I are always online taking any job search related questions, career development questions. And the third Wednesday of each month, we're doing our webinar series. I think next up is LinkedIn. On the next slide, I want to let you know that there are career fairs happening on campus today and tomorrow, and any UK alum who has at least 12 credits earned with the university, you don't have to have completed your degree, you could have taken a semester of classes and still qualify, can access those virtual career fairs that are happening via the Handshake platform. So if you need information on that, I'll put our email address in the chat, ukalumnicareer@uky.edu, and I'm happy to, I'll watch that email account this afternoon and happy to send you information on those. Today's career fair is more focused on technology related jobs, engineering, STEM, computer science, and tomorrow's a little bit more broad, business, communications, liberal arts, humanities. Alum students are all welcome to come. So, all right, I'm gonna pass it over to Nicole.
Okay, sorry about that, guys. Couldn't get my video back on. Alrighty, so let's see here. Updates from STEPS. Let's see here. Currently, STEPS, as far as positions that are high priority or that I encourage you to maybe go look at, medical office specialist positions, medical office administrative and staff support positions are actually open as well. As well as COVID, any positions that are supportive to the pandemic right now, whether that is screeners, observers, testers, things like that. Definitely encourage you to go online if you would like to be a part of that community, which is helping us all. You know, we're all in this together. You know, please go on there and look at those to apply, as well as campus. Let's see here. Maintenance tech positions, PPD positions, things like that. I certainly encourage you guys just to go online. As I know, at the beginning of the meeting, there was a couple of people who actually have interviews. Good luck to you guys. I hope you do well. I'm sure you will. That's what Job Club's for, so I'm sure you'll do well. But yeah, feel free to go on there, apply to those jobs. And of course, again, as in previous weeks, I will send links to my colleagues here so that we can get those posted on LinkedIn. But feel free to just go online, apply yourself. Remember to click on temporary employment and just scroll through. There are many, many jobs. I couldn't even list them all, but those are some of the main ones. So I look forward to hearing from you soon. All righty. Thanks. Bye.
All right, just a reminder, we're wrapping up in our regular Job Club session. And at this time, we're getting ready to shift over to our STAR interview practice session. I'm going to put the link into the chat box right now. Our graduate assistant, Queen Sullivan, is going to be online. She's going to lead us through the STAR strategy for answering behavioral-based interview questions. As much as 50 to 75% of your interviews will be behavioral-based questions where you're asked to give scenarios or examples of your previous work. Using the STAR-based strategy is going to help you keep that structure organized and to be successful in those interviews. So I hope that you'll join us. In the Zoom meeting, the link's in the chat box there. Audio capacity is required. Video is preferred if you're willing to turn your camera on, not required. And we're going to do some practice with STAR and we'll talk more about the strategy there. That session will wrap up by 11. I know many have 11 o'clock appointment, so we respect that. There are still just a very few booking appointments left. I think there's 1 or 2 mock interview sets left. So if you're looking for interview practice, know that that's an option, and I just put that into the chat as well. All right, Ellie, last slide for us. Thanks so much. Next time at Job Club, October the 13th, Know Your Worth, Salary Negotiation and Benefits. We're so excited to host Shelly Trent, and she's a career coach in private industry, and she's a very knowledgeable human resources expert as well, for a session on salary negotiation. So I hope that you'll register. I'm going to pop the registration link for our next session into the chat box. At this time, I'm going to leave the Zoom link up just for about 10 more seconds so that those that want to get any links out of the chat can. But on behalf of the UK Alumni Association, the Fayette County Cooperative Extension, and UK HR Steps Temporary Employment, thank you so much for logging into Job Club today. We're so grateful for you to be part of our Job Club community. Thank you and have a great day.